You kind of moved into a new city, Seattle. Have you been to Seattle before? You came to Swedish and interviewed here?
Only for the interviews.
Yeah.
This is the last corner.
How has Seattle been as a city for you? Is there anything that surprised you in particular about Seattle?
Yeah.
Let it rip.
My 3 a.m. brain will be less filtered than it normally is. I think I was just surprised. So statistically, like on paper, I was looking for a more diverse place to be. So I grew up in California in a very Vietnamese dense community, but beyond that, it was more than that. I was around Asians, Hispanics, Blacks, like white people, a variety of different races and socioeconomic status as well, a range. And then when I moved to Maine, that it was at the time the whitest state in the country. It is now number 2 instead of number 1, I think. And then my parents live in Georgia, South now, so very diverse there as well. And so when I was looking for residency programs, I wanted to just be in an area that had more cultural diversity, racial diversity, since I'd kind of missed that during my time in Maine. And really kind of looking actually specifically for cities that had a very strong Vietnamese presence, just basically an attempt to reconnect with my culture. And I love that aspect of Seattle, but I did not expect to be so aware of my race here, if that makes sense. Like in Maine, it was like expected. So like teachers always knew my name pretty quick. Kim, very Asian name, only Asian person. I was very used to being the only Asian person, like in class or at a restaurant or having people look at me. And then I just like got used to it, and to a point that I like didn't even notice at all. And now, but when I came here, for some reason, I felt the segregation more of like communities than I did before, and that race just seemed like a more important thing here, which was weird. I don't know if that's because of like the wokeness of this city or what, but it was weird. And I had talked to like other people about it. I was just like, it's just me, or I still can't quite put my finger on it. I really have enjoyed living here. If I had more family here, I could see myself being somewhere in like the greater Seattle area. But yeah, the access to the outdoors, very awesome. The food is good, although you have to work a little harder to find the good spots, I think. And yeah, the weather actually doesn't bother me very much. I kind of find it like a little bit romantic, like the
gray.
The gray. No, but
Kim's shades of gray in Seattle.
I felt it a little more. I think I felt the whole daylight saving things a little harder this year, but during intern year. But maybe it's because I was just in the hospital always, so I didn't like notice how gloomy it was. I don't know.
Yeah. It's I grew up in Seattle, and it's a really odd thing where it was like the area where I hung out a lot was both really diverse and also really segregated at the same time, where you can like clearly see every group is hanging out with each group.
Yeah, tribalism very strong.
Yeah, and so now that you're here, you're kind of in an interesting point in the Seattle area where a lot of the communities are moving outside of the city simply because we just can't afford it anymore. And so, that's kind of the big trend that you're kind of moving into. And I feel like you've really kind of embraced like your Vietnamese, heritage and like really appreciated it. Like you're like taking Vietnamese classes, you're like really involved with your Vietnamese patients. You're really trying your best to, pick up, the language wherever you can. And I really admire that. And, a lot of folks kind of take it for granted where, they have this background, but it's like, I feel like growing up, we're always like, it was always, being Vietnamese was always sometimes a little bit shameful because you were different, different foods that smelled weird. You had the Nick Mum that like stunk up the lunchroom, and sometimes your pants were too high or your clothes were too weird. But, it's at this point where you've kind of come full circle where you've really like learned to love who you are.
Yeah.
And Seattle's kind of like had, one of the bigger Vietnamese communities in the country. And yeah, tell us about, your work with, how you got involved, like how you even found these like Vietnamese classes and like how you like made a lot of actually Vietnamese connections around the city.
I specifically picked this area because of the program, but the reason why I looked at it as well was I wanted to be in a Vietnamese dense place. And so I already knew there would be resources. And so I basically just Googled things, to be honest. And then once I like found connections, I started following them on social media, and just that led me to other things. And so I think the first thing was really with the food, just being able to eat Vietnamese food more easily and not having to cook it or like go very far was awesome. And then from there, basically befriending people who are Vietnamese in the community. Hugh from Cherry Hill is an R3 and I'm an R2, and so when I became Facebook friends with him, he started posting lots of resources, and so basically every time he posted something, I would follow that rabbit hole. And so that's how I first found out about the classes. And so Little Friends of Little Saigon partnered with another organization basically to have these classes. And so that was when I took on the classes, which was last winter. And so that was a 10-week course. And so it was a language and cultural class. And then from there, I made friends with other like first generation American Vietnamese folks that are around our age. And then once I like friended them, I started following the things that they posted. So like movies, documentaries, shows. And so that we go out to eat, we watch documentaries, we talk about said documentaries, we go to different events, try to volunteer at those events. And there's always something going on, which is awesome. And then there's the Vietnamese church, which I haven't gotten super involved with, but it was nice to go before like the COVID stuff. And just being able to like eat my Vietnamese food after my church. Like that was so nice growing up, and it's nice being able to return to that. So yeah, it's it's I feel like it's not always recognized, but or taught of, how do we bring a resident into a new city, and how do we immerse them in the community that's there and teach them about the culture, and how do we train residents to kind of be a part of the community that they are. And I feel like you model that really well, and really, demonstrate that. And I feel like if, I think it's a good model that I would love to like replicate or kind of teach the new interns of like, hey, this is how you get to know where you're at, who's there, how you get involved in not just the food, but also the culture, the history, and everything there.